Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I'm delighted on this episode to be joined by an author creator team. This is Chris and JJ Grabenstein, and between them is a creature called Stinky, I believe.
Stinky the skunk right there.
That's right. That's right. Now, have you two met each other prior to this Zoom call? I'm thinking you have.
Hey,
Yeah,
JJ,
Chris
nice to meet
Grabenstein. We've been married for 23 years.
Oh,
Yes.
fantastic.
We,
Fantastic. So you have indeed met.
we have, well,
Awesome.
yeah.
We meet every day.
There was that Heath Priest guy there introduced us, right?
What was that?
The guy introduced us with the rings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to meet people.
Why not?
Ring a
Yeah.
ring.
Yeah. Well, we got a brief history of your relationship there, but also curious about your relationship to storytelling. Anything that you'd like to say about your origin story as authors and creators?
Go ahead, JJ.
Oh, well, storytelling. This particular story, Stinky Stories, it's a series of four. The first two are coming out October 1st. And Stinky is the narrator, and he's a stuffy, as you can see. He's a stuffed skunk. And I started with storytelling as a little kid. I had like 20 stuffed animals on my bed. That's what we called them then, stuffed animals. And they were all over my bed. And every day at the end of the day, I would ask them about their days. And I would answer in different funny voices for each of them and find out who was bullying who and who was nice that day, who did something special. And I'd pick the one of honor that got to sleep on my pillow that night. So I was already telling stories at a very young age.
Yeah, and I was always telling stories in my head as a kid. I got some puppets once when I was 7 or 8 years old. So she was making up voices for her stuffed animals. I was making up characters for these puppets. And for some reason, even though I have four brothers, I remember playing by myself a lot. Maybe because I wanted to win every football game I make believe football game I played in. I'd throw the ball and I'd catch it dramatically and score the amazing touchdown. And I wasn't good at sports in school, but I was good at making my friends laugh. And I started writing little comic books where I would make up stories and tell them. And I was very lucky that I had a seventh grade English teacher who loved to laugh. And by the time I got to seventh grade, I had spent many years reading Mad Magazine. And I had
Yes.
developed this kind of sense of humor, this wit, this sarcasm. And when it came time to write like the essay about what did you do over your Thanksgiving vacation, I would write this kind of Art Buchwald type column, humor column about Thanksgiving dinner around my family's table. And this teacher loved it so much she would laugh. And she wrote in the margins of my paper one time, "You will make your living as a writer someday." And as I tell kids now, when a teacher tells you something, you know it has to be true because they all take a solemn vow to never lie to children. So the next year, when I was in eighth grade and had to write that essay about what do you want to be when you grow up, I wrote how I used to want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a chemical engineer like my father. But because that teacher in seventh grade encouraged me so much, I literally wrote, "But now my mind wanders to a new thought. To be a writer or a comedian is my quest. If this flops, I would be content to be a millionaire and run Grabenstein's department stores if I could ever fit the name on a sign." I know that because I always show that when I do school visits.
His mom saved his composition book.
Yeah. So
Oh,
that
nice.
started it. And then from then on, there was high school English teachers who introduced me to Hemingway and Shakespeare and Mark Twain. And I wrote for every school newspaper. I acted in plays, which is another kind of storytelling. JJ did a lot of acting in plays too. And I went to college and studied communications where I wrote stories. I did not like writing straight stories. I wrote features because they were more fun. And I wrote plays. I acted in plays. And I moved to New York City to be a writer or a comedian. So be careful what you wish for in the eighth grade because you'll still be doing it 10, 15 years later.
That's right. That's right. I once had a teacher tell me I would probably be a teacher. So there
There
you have
you
it.
go.
There
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go.
They
Yeah.
teachers think that in truth, I think teachers do see things that like your mom and dad would never say, like, "You're going to be a writer someday." Like, not really a career.
No, you proved that
Yeah.
wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. Love the story of a teacher speaking into your life. And of course, curious about how you decided that writing for children was the place to go for the two of you.
Well, when I first started writing, I wrote advertising for a long time. I did improvisational comedy. Then I did advertising where James Patterson was my boss. And then advertising is kind of a young person's business. By the time you get to 40, 45, you're looking around like, there's nobody my same age here. So when it was time for me to leave, I said, James Patterson had a pretty good second career when he quit advertising. So I went out and I started writing books, and I had 4 years of constant rejection. And my first book that was sold was actually a murder mystery for adults. And it won a couple of awards, and it did pretty well. And I wrote 7 or 8 books in that series. And I have 24 nieces and nephews. And they all said, can we read your books, Uncle Chris? Can we read your books? I said, no, maybe after college when you're 22, 23. And one of my books that got rejected was reread by an editor who was looking for middle grade ghost stories. And they said, can you turn this from this kind of Stephen Kingish thing I wrote about a haunted tree, can you turn this into a book for kids? And so I did some research. I read Louis Sachar's Holes. I read some Carl Hyacin. And I sort of said, well, I think I can do this. This might be fun. It's tapping into that Mad Magazine part of my brain once again. And I went back and I took that book. It was 110,000 words long. And I cut it down to 45,000 words and got rid of all the adult stuff. And I had so much fun doing it that I never went back. And then when I started meeting the kids who would come to book signings, hugging your books, or you start doing school visits, and you walk into the school and there's posters and placards, and the principal's dressed up like a character from your book. Or their first ones were ghost stories. They've got the whole library decorated like a graveyard, and bands would meet me. I said, this is much more fun than writing for adults. So I guess I realized I should have been writing for kids all along.
Nice.
And I said, I used to write for the Muppets. Maybe I wrote for the Muppets before I wrote advertising. Maybe that should have been a hit.
JJ, anything to add there about your connection with creating
for kids?
Well, of course, Chris, being my husband and being the best children's author on the planet, unbiased opinion, I read everything that he writes, of course, and I love it. And I started seeing the reaction that the kids would give him after they'd read one of his books, and how it really got through, the message. Every book has a message, even though you would never know that as a kid reading it. You just think it's a great, wonderful book, but they're absorbing things as they go, because he always puts some things in there for the kids to learn. And I started thinking about when I was that age, what was I reading, and what do I wish I had read? And I wish that someone had written a book that said who you are is more important than what you accomplish, because it was very competitive. And that's great if you can win at all that stuff. But what about who you are and how you treat other people? That's something to keep in mind as well. So we wrote Shine together, which really addresses that issue.
Yeah, that was well received. It was on a bunch of state award lists and stuff. So that was exciting. And we had fun doing it. And we stayed married after writing a book together.
Yeah.
Always good.
That's always helpful. And I think I was out of school, and I always do a little improv when I talk to kids, where we make up a story on the spot, trying to teach them to go ahead and just let the story flow and not worry so much. That's how you get over writer's block. And oftentimes I'd be in a library and I'd say, we can make up a story about anything, like these stuffed animals on the shelf here. What do you think happens at night when you guys aren't here? And we'd start spinning a story about how they came to life. And JJ had told me that story about how she had her chosen one.
Yes, the stuffed animal of honor on the bed.
And I said, we should do something. No one has done a book where stuffed animals kind of come to life. It's sort of Toy Story, but the kids are aware of that the toys can come to life.
But they only do it when there's no adult in the room.
That's right. There's no adults in the room. And we thought that'd be kind of fun, especially, I guess, because I watched a lot of Rocky and Bullwinkle. I love Fractured Fairy Tales, and Mad Magazine would often have this kind of running bit where they would do what happened after the fairy tale, like what happened after the princess kissed the frog, and what happened next. So that was kind of a thought. And also we wanted to encourage kids to use their imagination, because everything in this room that we're sitting in, none of it existed until somebody imagined that it could. So imagination is probably the most incredible power that human beings have to see. What we need is if there was something to hold books up in a space like made out of wood, and there were like different levels, and you could put your books in there. We'd call it a bookshelf. So somebody had to think that up, I know, thousands of years ago. So Stinky helps the kids use their imagination. You'll notice in the stories that the kids are the ones who come up with a solution. They make a suggestion, and Stinky says, "That's exactly what I was thinking," because he takes their idea and adds it into the story, and off it goes.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Well, both of you mentioned they're connecting with young readers in one way or another, and I'm curious because it's such a wonderful audience, an interesting, surprising, or wonderful time that you've connected with a young reader.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll talk about Shine because that's my experience. And we basically the messages of kindness and of being a good person. And we were hoping that kids would take that away from it and would, enact it in their own lives. First of all, we're so honored. There's a school that every year we have an award in the book. I don't want to give anything away for people who haven't read it, but there's a school that does their own Excelsior Award every year, and we get to announce the winners, and that's really fun. But also, we get letters sometimes or emails from people who've read the book. And we got one from a boy who said, "I read your book last week and I loved it. And I want you to know that a new student started at our school this week, and I was extra nice to the new girl."
That's nice. And I'm lucky because I was a reluctant reader when I was growing up. I like to read books that got a movie projector going in my brain. I like Mad Magazine, short, pithy, funny. And so I think I write for that kid I used to be. I write sort of fast-paced page turners, and then we get a lot of emails, either from the kids or the parents. I get a lot from parents who say that our son or daughter either has a learning disability or has never liked to read. And it was so sad for me because I love to read and none of my kids like to read, but they picked up your book. And so my books have become sort of gateways to a lot of kids to start to read. And I just met a lot of kids in schools too. And those are always fun interactions to meet them. And I guess I am especially fond of the kids who didn't like to read till they read my books, and now they can't stop reading.
And that's why the Stinky stories are actually geared to slightly younger kids, like first grade, second
Actually,
grade.
kindergarten,
Oh,
my teacher could
kindergarten.
read it to, kindergarten, first, second.
They can be read to the kids or the kids can read them, but
Right.
they're funny. They're really funny. And of course, they use imagination. And we're so hopeful that kids will like them and it will open the door to reading for them. Because if they enjoy them, they'll come back and read another book and that'll set them off for life.
It's kind of like, I always heard the story that Dick and Jane, which is how I learned how to read, see Dick run, run, Dick run, see Spot run, that there was a list of, I don't know, 56 words that had to be in those books to teach kids how to read. I think the cat, hat, and some army buddy of Theodore Geisel bet him. He said, "I bet you can't write an entertaining book using those same words." Wrote The Cat in the Hat based on those same words. So what we're trying to do is help kids who are at that age when they pick up Stinky stories, they're starting to read for themselves. So we have a great editor, David Linker at HarperCollins, who knows more about this genre than we do and is helping us like, the vocabulary, you got to be careful which words you use, because he says part of the joy of these books is the kids feel this pride in, I read this.
Yes, I read a chapter book.
And to help them along, we make it funny, goofy, silly, put some Stinky jokes in there.
And we have a wonderful illustrator, Alex Patrick, who does our illustrations, and he created Stinky, the look for Stinky. That's him. So he gets a lot of credit too, and there are a lot of wonderful drawings in the book.
So the whole experience is fun and silly, and kids, oh, what do you know? I'm learning how to read.
Yeah.
Love it, love it. Well, curious also, you might have just answered this, but the essential ingredients of a Grabenstein adventure. So anything else that's part of the creative recipe?
Fast-paced fun. That was like when I used to work in advertising and I had to design a website. And so I got to come up with a brand positioning. And actually, even my adult mysteries were fast-paced fun.
It's true.
So everything that we do, hopefully when people pick up a Grabenstein book, they'll say, this is going to be fast-paced fun. And sometimes there'll be like serious books I want to write, and my editors will go, yeah, it's not fast-paced fun. They'll save that for somebody else to do. The kids are coming to your books because they want an adventure. And, I use a lot of techniques that maybe I learned in advertising, short chapters, cliffhangers at the end of every chapter. And the other great emails I love getting are from the teachers who say that when they do a read aloud with one of my books, the kids go, one more chapter, one more chapter.
Love it,
even when it's time for recess. They'd rather stay indoors and hear the next chapter.
That's a compliment.
That's a compliment.
That's quite a vote for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you'd like to mention before we get to the final question? If I'm a listener out there, a teacher, I will say I love the possibility of a wonderful read aloud book, something that can be shared, that kids can
We
read
had
on
the
their
fun
own.
of reading it aloud.
We got to do the audio recording.
What are those
Oh,
voices
nice.
sound like?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, Stinky has this kind of voice, but you got to buy the book to hear the stories.
And I got to be the goofier characters, like Wags the dog. Hey, Stinky, tell us about the dog that's in the story. And I got to be Mr. Stuffington, the bear, who's telling Stinky, you cannot change the end of the story. Mrs. Emerson said, the end, that means it is over. And so it was a lot of fun.
It's Jerry the giraffe, who's very confused about everything. She doesn't know what's going on, so she asks a lot of really silly questions.
But you got to carry the load. Stinky narrates the story, is in the story. He always puts himself into the story. And so they're fun. The first one is called The Boy Who Cried Underpants. So it's a fractured fable, if you will, an Aesop's fable, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Because what we looked at were stories where there might be a kid who said, well, yeah, he cried wolf and the wolf showed up, really. And what happened to the sheep? What happened to the poor sheep? So Stinky can tell them that everything's going to be okay.
Mhm.
And Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack goes up there and robs this giant, steals everything out of the guy's house. The guy comes down, like, give me my stuff back. And Jack chops down the beanstalk, so there's no way for him to go home. So the kids are worried, like, what did he do? He's stuck. He can't go home. And then we have two more coming out. What are the
Yes,
next
we
two?
do. The Three Smelly Goats Gruff and Moldy Locks and the Three Bears.
And so in the Three Smelly Goats Gruff, there's a troll. We all know the goats knock him off the bridge, right? The big Billy Goat Gruff knocks him off. What happened to him?
Can he swim? We don't know.
Does he get eaten by sharks? What happens in that river? And will he ever find another bridge to sleep under? Because the bridge was his house, sleeping under the bridge. And then with Moldy Locks, we had fun because you think about it, she's a kind of a bratty little girl who breaks into people's homes, uses all their stuff, eats their porridge, messes up their beds, and never once says please or thank you. When the bears catch her, she just jumps out the window and runs home. A lot of like fairy tales end that way. And she jumped out the window and ran home. If I'm a kid, I'm going, well, what shouldn't they have, she says I'm sorry or offered to make the beds for the bears or something. So we have a lot of fun thinking about that. And what we love about that is that in these stories, the kids are operating out of the kindness or their sense of right and wrong. And I think kids have a really strong sense of what's right and what's wrong. And so we're trying to play on that a little bit too.
And also there are a lot of books for kids, of course, that feature animals, but we don't know of any with a skunk as the main star. So we thought it would be really fun to have Stinky be our main character. And if you read the books, you'll see that part of the solution in each and every story has something to do with his stinks. His stinks
Nice.
help get the person out of trouble. So it's very fun.
Very talented tale.
Yes,
He can make
you
it
smell like
smell
anything.
raspberry milkshake or
A dirty diaper.
dirty diaper. It depends on what needs to be done.
An underrated animal, an underappreciated animal who's not now the star of a book. I love it. A book series.
Yes.
Yeah. If I'm someone who wants to see the books or connect for an author visit, any places that I can go for that?
We have a great website, www. People still say www. It's chrisgrabenstein.com. How am I spelling Grabenstein, JJ?
G-R-A-B as in boy, S-T-E-I-n.
You left out
Oh, I
the-
left the E-N. G-R-A-B as in boy, E-N, S-T-E-I-N.
So it's like Frankenstein, except you're grabbing a stein.
I haven't been a Grabenstein as long as he has. So
That's why I love hearing her spell it. I've had to spell it my entire life.
because people get it confused with Grabenstein with the V because
Or
they're
Grabowski, so your name's Grabinowitz? No, I told you it's Grabenstein.
there's Grabenstein apples, so yeah, it's confusing.
It's confusing. But
I
that
get
at
you, I get you.
chrisgrabenstein.com, there'll be links to the books and you can go read about them. We're going to have, I think they're working on it right now. We're going to put up a little behind the scenes video of us working on the audio book together. So you get a sample of that. And then the links will take you to the publisher's page where you can read samples of the book and listen to samples of the audiobook as well.
And you can order them.
Oh, you can also buy the
You can
book.
also buy them. There's several
Yes.
different ways you
I
can choose
forgot
where you'd
about
like to
that
buy
part.
it.
Yeah. Bye.
Just saying.
The
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, in this space below us, we've been supported by lots of images of the book series, Shine, and other things. So glad to feature you both. Glad to have you back anytime. Have we missed anything at all that you want to make sure to share before we close?
No, I just hopefully the kids will have a lot of fun reading these stories. And if so, let us know about it. We love getting email from folks. There's a place on my website that also tells you how to send emails. And what's really fun is you go to school, they send you these big envelopes where every kid in the school draws a picture. So that's always fun too.
Yeah, and we're hoping that the series will continue beyond the first 4 books. So if you have ideas for any new smells that we missed, let us know.
Oh, that's good. A smell
Yeah. A
competition.
new smell.
I like that. I like that.
He's up for it, Stinky. He's up for it.
Yeah.
Picturing a scratch and sniff here. Just saying.
Yes.
And we looked into doing scratch and sniff Snickers, prohibitively expensive.
Ah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Well, many thanks to you both again, and glad to have you back anytime.
All
Thank
right,
you so
thank you
much.
so much.
Appreciate it.